Thank you so much for joining us today for our session on how to use news to deepen donor relationships. We're happy to have so many of you joining us today. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to get started. You know, news is one of the most valuable, reliable, yet overlooked resources to learn more about your prospects and donors. You know, news is comprised of three main pieces, if you think about it. It's people, businesses, and trends. And what are fundraising teams looking for? Of course, information on people, businesses, and trends. So we're excited to share with you today some deeper information on how you can use news to deepen those relationships with your prospects and donors. So welcome. My name is Catherine Bergerson. I am the Vice President of Marketing, and I'll be joined today by my colleague, Sarah Landman. As we get started, just want to let you know that this session is being recorded, and we will send a recording out to you following today's session. We're happy to take your questions. You may see a gray bar that says questions or chat, or depending on your version of GoToWebinar, it may be icons on the left hand of your screen. Just click there, enter your questions, and we'll pause throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to get to all of them, and if we can't get to yours, we do commit to getting back to you in the very near future. So I'd like to tell you just a little bit of background about Insightful. Insightful is a new software that helps fundraising teams get that crucial news and information about their prospects and donors wherever they are in the world. And we bring vetted, credible information that provides information that can ultimately help your organization raise more money and advance your mission. So we accomplish this through an easy-to-use interface that efficiently delivers the right information at the right time. And it's all available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from any device. Now, all of this is powered by our parent company to share, recently celebrated its 50th anniversary as a family-owned company, and we're very proud of that accomplishment. So that's about Insightful and Newsbank, but the reason we're again about how to use the news to help deepen those donor relationships. And to lead our discussion is my colleague, Sarah Landman. Sarah has served as a major gift officer and a leader at 2 major national fundraising consulting firms. She's helped raise more than $500 million during her nearly 20-year career serving nonprofits. She's a frequent speaker on various events, including innovative fundraising strategies, fundraising with millennials. She's well known for her popular talks with APRA and NEDRA conferences and chapters, and she currently serves as the Executive Vice President of Insightful. So Sarah, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Okay, we'll start here. So as we're talking about how to use news to deepen donor relationships, and Catherine mentioned my background in major gifts fundraising consulting, and I've been with Insightful for the last 4 years, pretty much from its inception. And what isn't in my resume or on my bio is that my dad is a newspaper publisher in a small town, Winona, Minnesota. It's the Winona Post. And I grew up around the news in my community and this family business, and really got to see firsthand the value a community puts in the news about people that's contained in a newspaper, and just how that informs the community about the events and the people, the philanthropy, who was doing what, who maybe left town. And I brought that love and care for the news into my first job as a major gifts fundraiser at St. Mary's University in Winona, Minnesota. And I remember wanting news about my donors and my prospective donors. And the year was 2004. So unfortunately at that time, it wasn't as easy to get news about my donors, especially historical news and even current news. My best option was to go sit in a dirty file cabinet and crawl through files to maybe find something for historical news. And my best option for current news was to be delivered clippings that I might get once a month, long after any of the events happened, long after somebody had sold a privately held business, won an award, or sometimes, unfortunately, we're in an obit and I didn't see it to share condolences in a time that was anywhere near reasonable. So I started my career with this love and care of the news, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to work at Insightful, where I work in the intersection of philanthropy, tech, and the news. And I'm excited to talk a little bit to you about today about how I found that you can really deepen those donor relationships with the news. Turn off my camera quickly. Okay, so let me start by making a case for the news to deepen donor relationships. And one thing I hear a lot from fundraisers, especially from people in the VP of development chair, is, well, my major donors just tell me when things are happening, or I just go meet with them, or they happen to come to campus. And yeah, if they've had things happen, bad things, good things, it's going to come up organically in conversation. We didn't have those authentic in-person interactions. They weren't showing up on campus, and it just didn't work to just rely on someone just telling you what was happening in their lives. And sometimes donors will just expect you to know when things are happening in their lives, great things and awful things. They won't just tell you. If they have something terrible happening in their lives, they may not think or have time to tell you. And those are times that your nonprofit should be reaching out and should be supportive to your donors. The same thing with when they have something wonderful happen in their lives. Sometimes they're too busy to tell you, and sometimes they're humble people. They've done very well and they're supportive of you, but they're not, if they come and tell you about all the great things happening with their business or awards or honors, they may feel like they're coming off as bragging. Also, a case for the news is that technology makes it easier to keep up on news about your donors and trustees and your potential prospective donors than ever before. There are so many ways with tech that makes it easy to do this key cultivation step where you can find so many reasons to connect. And one more point, it's Obvious Adams. I know that's a marketing book, and I'll get into that in a second, but I know that many of us have the challenge and the question of, how do I find information about my donors? How do I find out more about my donors? How can I find ways to connect with my donors? And the most obvious answer to that is the news that's out there, and it's accessible to all of us in one way or another to find out more about our donors and keep up on what's happening. And the Obvious Adams reference is a marketing book that the whole premise is the simplest answer is usually the best answer. And my answer, and I think the simplest answer to how do we find out donor information, is look to the news. All right, for a second, want to talk about the cost of missing something. And there are true costs here. There are missed opportunities. You can miss something great that happens in the life of your donor. They can be named to a presidential commission. They can be given an award, named to a board. And if you aren't acknowledging those things or seeing those things when they're reported in the news, somebody else is. Another nonprofit that they support may be seeing it. And if they see it, they're going to wonder why you weren't involved, why you didn't see it. Well, does this organization care about me more because they saw it and care to look than this organization that didn't? That's a missed opportunity. You can also look uncaring, and that you just don't care enough to keep on top of the news about people that are most generous to you. And in the worst case scenario, you can lose a donor over it. We work with a nonprofit that the cost of missing a piece of news information, unfortunately, was about $70 million because they had a donor that lost their mother and they didn't catch the obit for her mother. And this donor went out into the press and openly penned a letter saying that she would never give to this organization ever again because they missed her mother's obituary, and how uncaring that was. And unfortunately, that happened. That was unfortunate for the donor, and it was unfortunate for the institution. And a side note, that happened before they were working with us. Insightful happens to have tech to make it easy to stay on top of these things. And they started working with us, so this would never happen again. All right, got through the costs. Let's talk about the benefits. There are so many benefits of using the news to deepen donor relationships. You can be better prepared. You can better prepare your gift officers to guide and have more successful conversations. You can show that you truly care about that donor, that trustee, that you care enough to follow them in the news. They all know you can, and there are tools out there to do it. And it can provide true donor cultivation opportunities. When you are following your donors in the news and you find things that are happening in their lives that are newsworthy that you can get and you can have your gift officer or leadership team use to reach out, it's a great cultivation tool. We hear it over and over and over again with our customers about when they are finding that news in those donors' local communities and taking that to reach out. It's a great cultivation move. They look like they care, which they do, and they almost look omniscient to that donor, that they knew something about them and what was happening in their lives and saw it in the news. It's not creepy because it's in the news out there for everyone to see. They recognize that, but that they took the time to see it, find it, and reach out. Quick case study of the ROI in news information. We work with an organization, a social service that has a donor that made a nice gift, but they couldn't really, nobody knew this donor. Everybody was kind of talking at a board level, saying, and a staff level saying, okay, who knows anything? Nobody did. They looked up that donor in Insightful and found a land transfer in another state. That land transfer and sharing that with the board of that's what we found about them prompted the board member to say, you know what? Putting that name and that state together, I think I know someone that knows them. They did, and that person happened to be a trusted advisor for this donor. That board member reached out to the trusted advisor. The trusted advisor was thrilled that this donor was doing such beautiful work for this social service, called the donor, affirmed, hey, I know this board member, this is a good organization, congratulations on your gift, happy you're involved. Through that series of events that started with a single piece of news or information, that donor came and made $1 million gift. It was unsolicited. They had never and still have never met with a gift officer. They've been thanked, and that has led to 2 other 6-figure gifts. And it started, the major philanthropy started with that single piece of news information leading to a connection. And I know there are relationship tech tools. I will tell you that this relationship never would have shown up on that tool. It was the information in the news that led, combined with that connection, that really made some magic things happen. Another example is Columbia University. They do a really good job of tracking their trustees and top donors in the news, and they find a number of awards and honors for those individuals that result in cultivation actions, even from their president, of when they're winning those awards and honors, and they really see the value of that and the return on that from a philanthropic perspective. Next is Cornell University. They needed information about young entrepreneurs that raised 160 million in venture funding. They looked for it everywhere in all their tools and platforms, which they have many. And the one place they found good information about these young entrepreneurs was in the news, in that vetted news information, and that helped them. Another example is a law school customer that we worked with. They really found value in historical news, and they uncovered, they had a new family they were meeting with. They knew they had capacity, and they looked them up in historical news and found that the patriarch of the family that really generated the wealth and changed the life of the family was a World War II veteran. And having that information going into this meeting was tremendously valuable for them, because one of their case items that they raise money for but don't typically lead with is a veteran scholarship, that they provide law school educations for veterans and really have a strong philanthropic program for that. So they were able to guide, having that news information, their gift officer team was able to guide the conversation with those new donors to make that connection of something they cared about that they wouldn't have necessarily known about so quickly without the news, and really make a strong connection, first connection with that family, and that led to a cultivation for a major gift. Another example is a medical foundation, and they're finding key information about the philanthropy of board members, about board members being appointed to other boards. They found an op-ed in the news that a donor that was written by a donor that donor expected them to know about. And they're taking all of these good insights, again, awards, honors, those great things happening in the lives of their donors, and they're sending it out to their gift officer team and their leadership. News information has gone from the prospect research team right to the CEO to help move relationships forward. Want to take a second to just cover the type of information that's in the news. One type of information that's helpful for philanthropy is information about privately held companies. I know many of us have this challenge. You know you have donors that own privately held companies. You have no earthly idea how big those companies are for capacity. The best way to find information about privately held companies is the news, and that was actually cited by the Library of Congress. If you go to their website, they will tell you that the best way that exists to find information about those privately held companies is to look in the news. And a couple reasons behind that is those companies are in communities, and the news covers those companies in those communities. And they cover when they are making, when they're building a new facility, are hiring new people, have big things happening, or when those companies are up for sale or merging, they buy another company. Those are the places where you're going to find vetted information that will tell you, okay, is this company a 3-employee company or a 300+ employee company? And how can we use that to inform both capacity and maybe even some of the things that donor might care about? Because the other thing that's written about in the news are the people that own those privately held companies. They're never going to show up in your main news outlets, but they are going to show up in the communities that they own those businesses. Another piece of information, sorry, I need to go back for 1 second. There's other pieces of information here, news about special purpose acquisition companies. It's a best practice if you know you have donors involved with a SPAC to follow the name of that SPAC to get up-to-date information about what's happening there. You can find a number of articles about foundations if you're looking for a funding source or you have a donor that has a family foundation. Communities where they're giving typically write about those gifts and those donors. Real estate transactions and land purchases. Depending on the municipalities, real estate transactions are usually going to be in the news. So are land purchases. And we discussed the value of that one land purchase a few slides ago. That was the value of that was truly $1 million. Obituaries. The news is going to be your best source to get up-to-date obituaries. And it's so important that you catch those and catch those quickly for your trustees and your top donors and their families. If they lose a family member, you need to know that when it happens so that you can inform your team to do the right thing. Sometimes it's a call, sometimes it's sending a letter, sometimes it's sending flowers. It could even be booking travel for your president or vice president of development. But I've seen so many times the bad things that happen and the hurt feelings when an obit is missed, and just how special it is for the donor that you are there in their time of need if they're losing a family member. They are giving you so much, and by you keeping on top of what's happening with them and their family and being there for them when the worst happens, that's really meaningful and important. Marriage and divorce announcements, those are in the news, as well as philanthropic activity. And I talked a little bit about the articles about foundations, and typically the press will write about those gifts in the communities where they're being given. Same with philanthropic activity. If your donor is making a major gift to someone else, those are great articles to read, because typically when those are being written, especially in small towns, suburbs, society magazines, those donors are going to share a lot about their philanthropic hopes and dreams and history and what this means to them. And those are all good insights for your organization and your fundraisers to know. Next, I want to talk about the value of news information with those millennial major donors. Yes, there are millennial major donors. There's going to be a lot more by the year 2030 with the Great Wealth Transfer. I speak on this as well. There's a copy of a video of this presentation on our website if this is something that you and your team are interested in learning more about, or your gift officers and leaders are looking for more information on this topic. Go to Insightful, it's there. But millennial major donors just have higher expectations about philanthropy. They believe in impact over institution, and there's a lot less room to frankly mess up if you're not connecting with them in an authentic way. They can be harder to connect with, and they expect you to just know things about them, especially when there's something in the press. If you're trying to start a relationship or have a relationship with them and they're in the press and you don't see it and act on it, that's not going to go well. They expect it because their lives have all been online, and you may not have their personal social media, or that may not be public, but if they are in a news article, they're going to expect you to see that and your team to act on it. And that can also be an opportunity because they're harder to connect with. And if you see an article about someone that you're looking to connect with that is a millennial or a millennial family member of another generation of donor, an article about them being named a CEO or getting a promotion, or being named to a board, those are all, or 40 under 40, all of those things. Those are great door openers for your organization to say, hey, I saw this, would love to connect with you. That is the sign of an authentic relationship, and that you really care and want to get to know this person. And those millennials, they want more authentic relationships with the organizations and the people that are running those organizations, the gift officers of those organizations. It's much more authentic and less transactional. Finally, deeper relation news and keeping on top of the news leads to deeper relationships, and that leads to more revenue. When you are keeping on top of the news, or your gift officers are, typically we see people in a research management, prospect research, prospect management capacity helping their gift officers with this. But when you're sending them those insights, when you're sending your gift officers those news insights so that they can reach out to their donors, they look caring and even omniscient, as we mentioned before. It's a great thing for the donor. It's a great thing for the gift officers. They will thank you for the insights. And when you're keeping on top of news about your donors, your organization's share in the best times in those donors' life that are being reported about, when they sell their privately held company, when they're giving their leadership gifts, when they're named to boards, given in awards, you share in that. And you're also sharing and showing that you're there for them in those difficult times. And those times and the gestures that happen in those times, both the highs and lows of life, are the times and gestures that are going to be remembered. And if you're there with your donors during that time, the relationship will be deepened. And again, it just will lead to more revenue for your institution. I know following donors in the news can be hard. Recommendations is to make doing this an easier part of your workflow. Insightful was basically invented to take the pain out of following your donors in the news. We've got some ways to do that, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. But even if you can't do that, find tools where you can. It's just so important to do what you can, how you can, for this crucial stewardship activity. Another recommendation is to engage people that wouldn't typically be engaged in following donors in the news. One suggestion is engage the office of your vice president or president. They typically have executive assistants. It's not hard for them to follow your trustees or a couple key donors that you know your organization can't afford to miss things on. The same with your trustees. If you have active development committee members of your board of trustees, ask them to just keep on top of a couple donors in the news. It's an easy thing for them to do, and they typically have used news to be successful. I hear a lot of those stories about trustees, even when news wasn't so easy, taking that to use insights to grow their businesses. And they recognize the value of news for you and your nonprofit, and this is an easy ask and engagement step. Finally, your organization has a responsibility to know when your donors are in the news. It's good stewardship of the relationship. Again, they make these leadership investments in you for you to care enough to stay on top of and authentically care about what's happening with them. It's good stewardship, period. Number two is it's expected. They expect you to know these things, especially if others know these things, or if they're millennials and they've lived their lives online. And again, it's just bottom line, the right thing to do, to follow them, to make sure you're there in the best times of their lives and the worst, to be on this philanthropically, authentically, and truly together. And then finally, I will open it up for any questions, and I'll turn my camera back on.
Sarah, thank you so much. Wow, packed with great information. And I love always hearing about how you grew up in a news family and how that's really ingrained in you, and something that we share in our backgrounds, the passion for news and understanding the importance of it. So thank you for those insights. Just to remind those of you in the audience today, if you have questions, you may either see a gray bar that says questions or chat, or icons on the left-hand side of your screen. Open those up, pop them in there, but we do have a few to get started. A quick question about today's presentation, if it will be recorded, and yes. Thank you, Susan, for that question. It is being recorded, and we'll send it out to you following today's session. Okay, other questions? How do we get beyond what we're doing right now? And one of our most popular questions, Google Alerts. How to get beyond Google Alerts?
Yeah, really good question. Google Alerts are hard. It's better than nothing, but there are better ways. And one way, frankly, is insightful. We've made it easier to follow more people. And because we actually license content from publishers, you're not hitting paywalls. You're actually, when you're alerted, you're driven exactly to the news source for you to take it and then share it with anybody you want to have to share it with. You don't hit a paywall or a login. That's how we're helping our customers follow more people and do more there. A quick news stat I didn't share, but I think is relevant for probably everybody. And that's Catherine and I meet with a news consultant pretty much monthly. And he shared a stat that really surprised me. And that's that 70% of all news today is behind some type of paywall. And also a stat that includes 95% of significant daily papers. This is a trend that we're going to start seeing more of based on the information I'm hearing and seeing, and it's going to make it harder to rely on Google Alerts. And I'll tell one more Google story. So we work with a customer that they have a major donor that won great big award, huge thing for him. The prospect researcher was following this person, saw it, they were able to quickly get it to the gift officer within a day. That's how we work, because we get direct feeds. That gift officer happened to have a meeting with that donor. They were the first to congratulate that donor in person. It was a special interaction for the gift officer, for the donor, for the institution, all very happy. They were also following that same donor in Google Alerts. They kept that on, and they didn't get a notice that that donor had received that award until 3 days after they got our alert. And in that case, 3 days make all the difference. In an obit situation, 3 days is the difference between sending flowers or attending a service or completely missing it. So we do recognize the timeliness of information. And anyway, that's a way that you can do more and make it easier. We can help. And even if we can't help, we can maybe help you think creatively about some things you can be doing to do more of this and make it streamlined.
Thank you very much. That actually leads into another question that we have about advice on handling negative news stories. You mentioned that, best of times, worst of times. How do you handle those negative situations?
Yeah, number one is about them, right? And first is due diligence. That's the best time to catch something. If you have a donor that wants to make a significant donation that's going to get press or wants to put their name on the building, I think we've all recognized the value of vetting that person before that happens. Historical news is in my opinion, the best way to vet that person. Our resource, Insightful, includes over 14,000 sources from 200 countries, and it goes back to the mid-'80s. So if you're looking for information on someone you're vetting, chances are, if there are things you need to find, they are likely going to be in our historical news content, and we make it easy for you to find that. So I would say that's step one, is catch it before the relationship happens. If you have an ongoing relationship with someone and negative news hits, again, catching it in a timely manner is crucial, because you can take that, knowing it, you'd rather know it yourself than have somebody else share it with you. And then you can do what you need to do. I always suggest for organizations to have a crisis PR plan before you need one, even if you don't think you're big enough, kind of know the key steps and who you call if you are in a situation like that, because being in the middle of it is not the right time to have your plan for what you do if donor X gets in big trouble and they're very closely and publicly aligned with you.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, knowing in advance and having those internal plans in place, because there's internal communications and external communications, and knowing who to go to with what information is absolutely crucial. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And just one more that international news can be hard to find, especially the historical international news. If you need that, we can help you. We've been on calls with a number of people that are like, oh, what do you have about this person? And we've pulled up the screen and they've been like, whoa, okay, I didn't know that. So if you need information like that, please get in touch with us. We'd love to be able to help you.
Excellent, thank you. And this sort of is another good segue. Strategies or to connect or not duplicate resources with the communications department, between development and communications department. How do you best handle that when it comes to that PR relationship?
Yeah, so your communications office likely has a media monitoring tool, where they'll pick up mentions of usually your institution. They're not set up to follow your donors. So even if they tell you they are, it's not a tool that's set up to follow people. It's a tool that's set up to follow institutions. And it's set up to follow, but they don't typically license the content in any of these behind the paywall sources. So I understand the value of having a tool where you're going to get where the communications office has mentions. There's also value in having a tool that was built to get you news about your people and your foundations and the companies that you're interested in. And also there's value in your communications office being able to follow your institution and not get stuck behind a bunch of paywalls when it comes to the news. So I know that our customers, when they work with us in Insightful, their development team has access to Insightful, but we also grant access to their communications and marketing team to be helpful to them. So bottom line is, what they have is different than what this is, and how this can actually help deepen donor relationships, get information about people, and ultimately raise more money.
Excellent, thank you very much. Thank you for all of these wonderful questions. We do have a few that are more specific to the Insightful platform, and so we would like to invite you back next week. Sarah and I will be back again next Thursday for a session on Insightful and a demonstration. So we encourage you to come to that, or we will reach out to you following today's session to answer some of those more specific questions about Insightful as a product. So again, thank you so much, but to be respectful of your time, we just want to let you know, again, next steps, join us on Thursday. And I'm not sure it's June 15th, but I think it is May 25th, actually. When we send out the follow-up email, we'll have that link updated for you at 1 p.m. And we encourage you to extend the invitation to your colleagues. If you prefer, again, a customized demonstration, please reach out to us. If you download this presentation and click right here, you will get a link to register for a customized complimentary demonstration for you. Also, if you haven't heard our podcast, No More Raise More, it's a fantastic series about, made for fundraising professionals. It's conversations between fundraisers and their donors, how they have found success along the way, how they've turned negative situations around, trends in fundraising. So we encourage you to take a listen to our podcast, No More Raise More. As you exit today, you will find a very brief 2-question survey. We hope you'll let us know what you thought about today's session and how we can improve them in the future. If you have specific questions for Sarah, her information is on the screen. With that, we thank you for spending part of your day with us. So on behalf of Insightful and Newsbank, have a great day.
Thank you for coming. Really appreciate your time.
Bye.